The NBA you see today? It didn't start with LeBron. It didn't even start with Jordan. This league has survived near collapse, civil rights tension, TV blackouts, even a rival league trying to take it down. And every generation, from the Mekon era to the Jokic takeover, has rewritten the game in ways fans still argue about today. This is every NBA generation explained. And trust me, you've never seen the full picture like this. 1950s, when basketball was on life support. The NBA today is a billion-dollar machine, but in the 1950s, it was a league barely clinging to life. No big crowds, no TV deals, no superstars dunking from the free throw line. Just squeaky sneakers, second jobs, and hope. When the Basketball Association of America, BAA, and National Basketball League, NBL, merged in 1949 to form the NBA, nobody really believed it would last. The league was a mess. Most teams played in tiny high school gyms. Players earned so little they worked as teachers, factory workers, or salesmen in the off-season. And the fans? They were barely there. Sometimes fewer than 1,000 people showed up to games, and many of them left early. The game itself? Slow, clunky, ugly. Teams would get a lead and just hold the ball, dribble in circles, pass around endlessly. There was no shot clock yet. So if you scored first, you could stall the whole game. Some final scores were in the 30s. Imagine paying to watch that. But in this chaos, a giant arrived. George Mikan. He wasn't flashy, he wasn't athletic, but Mikan, 6 feet 10 inches, thick-framed, wearing glasses, was unstoppable. He averaged over 23 points per game in an era where teams rarely crossed 70. Mikan's hook shot was automatic, his rebounding ferocious, and his presence intimidating. He won 5 championships with the Minneapolis Lakers, making him the league's first superstar. And here's the wild part. Mikan was too good. So good that the NBA had to change the rules. In 1951, they widened the lane from 6 feet to 12, just to stop him from camping near the basketball game. That rule? It became known as the Mekon Rule. But even with Mekon's dominance, the NBA was dying. In 1950, the Anderson Packers, Sheboygan Redskins, and Waterloo Hawks either folded or left. That same year, 6 teams dropped out, almost half the league. The NBA was bleeding money fast. That's when the league tried something radical. The 24-second shot clock. Introduced in 1954 by Syracuse Nationals owner Danny Biasone, the idea was simple. Force teams to shoot within 24 seconds or lose the ball. It changed everything. Pace increased, scoring exploded, fans came back, and for the first time, the NBA looked like the exciting sport it could be. But the real story of the 50s isn't just about rules and rebounds. It's about breaking barriers. In 1950, the NBA signed its first black players. Chuck Cooper was drafted by the Boston Celtics. Earl Lloyd became the first to actually play in a game. And Nat Sweetwater Clifton signed with the Knicks. These men faced insane racism. Some arenas refused to let them stay in team hotels. They got heckled, spit on, booed. But they didn't back down. Earl Lloyd once said, "I didn't want to be the best black player. I wanted to be the best. Period." Their courage paved the way for the league's future stars. They didn't just survive the hate, they thrived through it. By the end of the decade, a few new stars were emerging, like Bob Cousy, the flashy point guard for Boston, and Bill Sharman, a dead-eye shooter. The Celtics, behind mastermind coach Red Auerbach, were stacking talent. A dynasty was brewing. But the league was still small, just 8 teams. No West Coast squads, no major national attention. The NBA Finals weren't even shown live on TV in most cities. And ticket sales? Still weak. And yet, it survived. That's what makes the 1950s special. It was the decade the NBA could have died, but it didn't. Because of pioneers like Mekon, because of bold decisions like the shot clock, and because a few brave black players said, "We belong here too." This wasn't the era of highlight dunks or social media beefs. It was the era of grit, rule-breaking, and the raw beginnings of something greater. And that something was just getting started. 1960s. Bill Russell's dynasty and Wilt's impossible numbers. The 1960s in the NBA? It wasn't a rivalry. It was a war between 2 giants. On one side, you had Bill Russell, the ultimate team guy. Quiet, cool, a defender with the instincts of a chess master. On the other, Wilt Chamberlain, the stat-breaking machine. Bigger, faster, stronger than anyone. Russell won. Wilt dominated. And fans were left asking, who was truly the greatest? But let's rewind. In 1959, the Celtics drafted Bill Russell and everything changed. He didn't care about scoring. He cared about winning. By 1969, the man had 11 NBA championships, more than any player in NBA history. That's not a typo. 11. He also won 5 MVPs, all while averaging just 15 points per game. Why? Because Russell was doing everything else: rebounding, blocking, rotating, sacrificing. He didn't just play defense. He invented modern defense. But here's the twist. Even though Russell kept winning rings, Wilt Chamberlain was putting up stats we've never seen before and may never see again. In 1962, Wilt averaged 50.4 points per game, 25.7 rebounds per game, and once played 48.5 minutes per game for the season. That's more than the total time in a regulation game. Oh, and one night, he dropped 100 points in a single game. No three-pointers, no overtime, just pure dominance. The league tried everything to slow him down, widened the lane again, changed inbound rules, even banned dunking during free throws. Yes, he could do that. Still, Wilt dominated physically like no one ever. But here's the painful truth for Wilt fans. Russell kept winning. And Wilt often fell short. Why? Russell had a team, a real team. He had Bob Cousy, the flashiest point guard of the decade, John Havlicek, the motor, Sam Jones, the clutch shooter, and the genius of Coach Red Auerbach, who told his players, "If you don't care who gets the credit, you'll win." Meanwhile, Wilt bounced around. Philadelphia, San Francisco, then back to Philly. He clashed with coaches. Some teammates hated how much he chased stats, and while his numbers were insane, his ring count wasn't. Wilt only won 2 titles. Russell won 11. The scoreboard didn't lie. But the 60s weren't just about these two. This was the decade the NBA grew up. For one, TV finally caught on. By the mid-60s, playoff games were being broadcast across the US. The NBA started looking like a real professional league. More black players were dominating. The game was becoming faster, more explosive, and the Boston Celtics, they were becoming the New York Yankees of basketball. Hated by many, respected by all. But there was tension. The NBA was still battling racism. Black players often couldn't eat in the same restaurants or stay in the same hotels as their teammates. In 1961, when a restaurant in Kentucky refused to serve Russell and his teammates, he walked out and boycotted the game. That was the kind of man Russell was. He wasn't just a winner. He was a leader, on and off the court. And while the Celtics were stacking banners, the league was expanding. The Chicago Packers, now Wizards, joined in 61. The Bulls arrived in 66. By the end of the decade, the NBA had 14 teams, up from just 8. It was slowly stretching west, setting up for something bigger. And the players? They weren't just athletes anymore. They were becoming icons. Wilt was larger than life. Russell was the blueprint for greatness. And the battles between them? They weren't just basketball games. They were ideological wars. Team versus individual, defense versus offense, sacrifice versus dominance. Ask any old school fan. The Wilt versus Russell matchups felt like the NBA Finals every night. By 1969, Russell retired, going out as a player coach, winning his 11th ring against who else? Wilt and the Lakers. That series was a mic drop. Russell walked away, never to return as a player again. And the league, it was forever changed. The 1970s. The chaos decade. ABA flash, NBA crash, and forgotten legends. If the 1960s were the NBA's golden rise, the 1970s were a straight-up roller coaster. A decade full of wild swings, forgotten legends, game-saving mergers, and some of the most slept-on MVPs in history. The NBA? It wasn't the only game in town anymore. Enter the ABA, the American Basketball Association. Founded in 1967, the ABA came in like a rock band crashing a black-tie dinner. They had the red, white, and blue ball. They had dunk contests. They had the three-point line, something the NBA still thought was a joke. And most of all, they had flair. We're talking about Dr. J, Julius Erving, flying through the air like he was made of helium. They had players with nicknames like Iceman, Skywalker, and Chocolate Thunder. The ABA was chaos, but it was fun chaos. Meanwhile, over in the NBA, there was drama. Let's start with the New York Knicks, who opened the decade by doing what they've struggled to do since: win. In 1970, led by Willis Reed, Walt Clyde Frazier, and Dave DeBusschere, the Knicks played some of the smartest, toughest team ball ever seen. And in Game 7 of the Finals, Willis Reed limped out of the tunnel with a torn thigh and hit the first 2 shots of the game. The crowd went crazy. That moment? Still one of the most iconic in NBA history. But here's the weird thing about the 70s. There was no true dynasty. 8 different teams won titles. No one repeated. It was unpredictable, messy, and kind of beautiful. In 1975, Rick Barry led the Golden State Warriors to a shocking final sweep. In 1977, Bill Walton, yes, the same guy with the tie-dye shirts and crazy broadcasts, led the Portland Trail Blazers to their only championship. And in 1979, a young point guard named Dennis Johnson helped the Seattle Supersonics win their first and only ring. But beneath all the excitement, trouble was brewing. By the mid-70s, the NBA was in serious decline. TV ratings were dropping. Playoff games were being shown on tape delay, meaning they aired hours after they ended. And worse, the league had a reputation for being soft, disorganized, and filled with drug problems. A shocking 75% of NBA players were estimated to be using cocaine during this time. And the image of the league? It was hurting. Badly. That's when the ABA-NBA merger finally happened in 1976. 4 ABA teams joined the NBA: San Antonio Spurs, Denver Nuggets, Indiana Pacers, New York Nets. And most importantly, the NBA gained stars. Dr. J jumped to the Sixers. George Gervin, the Iceman, brought his silky smooth game to San Antonio. And the three-point line? It came too, though not everyone was on board. Still, the merger breathed new life into the NBA. And in the middle of it all, some of the most underrated MVPs in NBA history were putting in work. Dave Cowens, the fiery Celtics big man who could rebound like Rodman and run the floor like a guard. Bob McAdoo, a scoring machine who once averaged 34.5 points per game and took home MVP in '75. Wes Unseld, who won MVP and Rookie of the Year in the same season. Only Wilt had done that before. But ask most modern fans and they'll tell you. They barely remember these guys. The 70s get buried under the shine of the 80s and 90s. And that's a shame, because the 70s were the NBA's turning point. The league nearly collapsed. But it also learned to take risks. The three-point shot, flashy dunks, hipper branding, and wild storylines, all that started here. And the players? They were starting to feel their power. The 1970s gave us the first big player empowerment moments, with stars like Kareem Abdul-Jabbar requesting trades and speaking openly about politics, race, and identity. Oh, speaking of Kareem, he dominated the decade. From 1971 to 1980, Kareem won 6 MVPs, more than any player in any decade. And though most of those came with the Milwaukee Bucks, his move to the Lakers in '75 would set the stage for something bigger. Something that would change the league forever. 1980s. Magic versus Bird, the rivalry that rescued the NBA. This wasn't just basketball anymore. This was Hollywood versus Hicktown, Flash versus fundamentals. And somehow, it saved a dying league. The NBA entered the 1980s in crisis. TV ratings were trash. Tape delay finals still haunted the league, and fans didn't trust what they were watching. Then, 2 rookies showed up, one from East Lansing, Michigan, the other from East Chicago, Indiana. They had already met in the 1979 NCAA title game, the most watched college basketball game of all time. That game, Magic Johnson's Michigan State beat Larry Bird's Indiana State. But that was just the first chapter. Fast forward to the NBA. Magic got drafted #1 by the Lakers. Bird had already signed early with the Boston Celtics. And just like that, the most legendary rivalry in NBA history was born. But this wasn't just 2 guys playing ball. This was coastal drama. Boston versus LA, white versus black, old school grit versus Showtime flash. The media ran wild with it, and America couldn't look away. Magic was all smiles, no look passes, behind the back magic. He had Kareem, he had James Worthy, he had Hollywood behind him. Bird? He was blue-collar, trash-talking, and absolutely ruthless. He didn't care about looking cool. He just wanted to destroy you. And he usually did. From 1980 to 1989, either the Lakers or Celtics made the finals every year but one. That's dominance. They met in the finals 3 times. 1984, Celtics won in 7. 1985, Lakers got revenge. 1987, Magic hit the famous junior skyhook to take Game 4 and the title. These weren't just games, they were battles of identity. Every matchup felt like a war between styles, culture, even generations. And because of that, the NBA exploded. By the mid-80s, NBA Finals were prime time, live coast to coast. Merch sales boomed, ratings surged, and more kids started watching NBA than ever before. Oh, and the MVP race? Bird and Magic ran the table. Bird, MVP in 1984, 1985, 1986. Magic, MVP in 1987, 1989. And he'd win more in the 90s. But it wasn't just them. This decade was loaded. Let's talk about Isaiah Thomas and the Pistons. Isaiah wasn't just a smiley guard. He was a killer. The bad boy Pistons came in late 80s with elbows, attitude, and no mercy. They beat up Bird, they beat up Magic. They didn't care about style, they cared about pain. Hakeem Olajuwon and Clyde Drexler Houston had serious talent. In 1986, they even beat the Lakers and faced Boston in the finals. Young Hakeem was already a problem. Crazy footwork, elite defense, and fearless offense. Michael Jordan, yeah. He arrived in 1984, dropped 28 points per game as a rookie. But the league wasn't ready to hand him the keys yet. He was a highlight reel, but he had to wait his turn. And just when the 80s were getting too comfortable, tragedy hit. In 1986, Len Bias, a college phenom compared to Jordan, died of a cocaine overdose just hours after being drafted by the Celtics. It shocked the NBA. It changed the way teams looked at players. And it reminded everyone, this game ain't bulletproof. Then, in 1991, right after another MVP run, Magic Johnson announced he had HIV. The world froze. Back then, HIV was a death sentence. People were scared to play with him. Some teammates walked off. But Magic didn't quit. He educated the world, played in the All-Star game, and became a symbol of strength. His retirement closed the door on the greatest rivalry in NBA history, 1990s. The Jordan era. When the NBA crown had only one king. This wasn't just domination. It was a takeover, an era where one man made the entire league bow down. Michael Jordan didn't just win games. He owned the decade. The 90s started with the bad boy Pistons still running the East. They had bullied Jordan for years, hand-checking, clotheslines, elbows to the ribs. But in 1991, MJ finally broke through. He swept the Pistons, walked past their cold handshake, and walked into the NBA Finals for the first time. And what happened next? 6 finals appearances, 6 championships, 6 finals MVPs, 0 losses. Let that sink in. Jordan beat Magic in 91, Clyde Drexler in 92, Charles Barkley in 93. Then after a brief retirement, he came back and took out Peyton and Kemp, Stockton and Malone, twice. And in between, he dropped 55 on the Knicks in the Garden. He won 72 games in 1996, a record that stood for 20 years. He hit the most iconic shot in NBA history. Game 6, 1998 Finals, against Utah. Crossover, pull-up, buckets. Game over, era over, legacy sealed. But it wasn't just the titles. MJ redefined fame. He made sneakers a religion. He made Gatorade and McDonald's cool. And most of all, he made the NBA global. China, Europe, Africa, kids everywhere weren't just watching Jordan, they were becoming Jordan. But let's not act like MJ had no competition. Hakeem Olajuwon owned the mid-90s when Jordan retired. Back-to-back titles in 94 and 95. Dream Shake was pure art, and he schooled Shaq in the finals. Reggie Miller gave MJ fits in the playoffs, the choke sign, the late-game daggers. But he never got past him. Karl Malone and John Stockton were machines. But Jordan stopped them cold twice in the finals. And then there was young Kobe, just entering the league, watching, learning. The 1990s were about respecting the GOAT. No scandals, no super teams, just one man, one team, and a league trying to catch him. And when Jordan retired in 1998, it left a vacuum. The NBA didn't just lose its best player, it lost its heartbeat. 2000s, Shaq, Kobe, and Duncan, the battle for the throne. The 2000s weren't just the next chapter, they were a war for the crown. When Michael Jordan stepped away, the NBA was wide open. But instead of one king, there were three fierce contenders, each with their own style, swagger, and legacy. First up, Shaquille O'Neal. At 7 feet 1 inch and over 300 pounds, Shaq was a wrecking ball. Dominant in the paint like no one before him. His size, speed, and agility made him unstoppable. Between 2000 and 2002, Shaq led the Los Angeles Lakers to a three-peat. He was Finals MVP every single time. Shaq's dominance was so overwhelming, some say he changed how teams built their rosters, all to stop him. But Shaq wasn't alone. Right next to him stood Kobe Bryant, the relentless assassin. A young guard who'd been in the league since 1996. Kobe brought unmatched work ethic and killer instinct. Known for his footwork, fadeaways, and cold-blooded shots, Kobe was a nightmare for defenders. He had flashes of brilliance during the early 2000s, but was often in Shaq's shadow. Their relationship? Explosive. Teammates one moment, rivals the next. Their feud became NBA headline drama for years. Then there was Tim Duncan, the big fundamental. Quiet, consistent, the steady force for the San Antonio Spurs. Duncan wasn't flashy like Shaq or Kobe, but he was the heart of a dynasty. Under coach Greg Popovich, Duncan's Spurs won titles in 1999, 2003, and 2005, with Duncan earning Finals MVP twice. His defense, mid-range game, and leadership made him the most balanced superstar of the decade. This era was also marked by super team attempts. The Lakers tried to build around Shaq and Kobe. The Spurs built a fortress around Duncan. Other teams tried, but mostly failed. Meanwhile, the league was changing fast. The rise of international players like Manu Ginobili and Tony Parker, both Spurs, showed the NBA was going global. The pace was getting faster, and analytics started creeping in. Shaq and Kobe's Lakers dynasty crashed in 2004, after a brutal playoff loss and ongoing tension. Kobe then took over as the undisputed leader, winning 2 titles in 2009 and 2010. Meanwhile, Duncan's Spurs kept grinding, winning more rings in 2007 and beyond. This decade was the passing of the torch, from Jordan's solo reign to a triple threat of domination. It was a test of power, patience, and pure skill. And for fans, it was an era packed with drama, heartbreak, and unforgettable highlights. 2010s, LeBron's reign, and the super team era. The 2010s changed everything. This was the decade when one player didn't just rule a team. He tried to rule the whole league. LeBron James came into the 2010s already a superstar. But it was in this decade that he built his legacy as the king of the NBA. After his famous 2010 decision to leave Cleveland for Miami, LeBron joined forces with Dwyane Wade and Chris Bosh, creating the first real modern super team. They won back-to-back titles in 2012 and 2013, changing the game forever. But LeBron's journey wasn't smooth. Back in Cleveland, his departure left fans shattered. When he returned in 2014, the pressure to win for his hometown was enormous. And he delivered, winning the 2016 title in one of the greatest finals ever, overcoming a 3-1 deficit against the Golden State Warriors. Speaking of the Warriors, the 2010s were defined by their rise. Led by Stephen Curry, Klay Thompson, and Draymond Green, the Warriors introduced a new style: pace, space, and three-point bombardment. In 2015, they won the title, signaling the start of a new dynasty. By 2016, the Warriors broke the record for most wins in a season with 73-9, only to lose the finals to LeBron's Cavaliers. In response, the Warriors made a huge move, signing Kevin Durant in 2016, creating a nearly unbeatable lineup. This super team dominated the NBA for years, winning 3 titles between 2017 and 2019. Their fast-paced, three-point heavy style revolutionized basketball globally. But it wasn't just the Warriors and LeBron. Other stars shaped the decade too. Kevin Durant, a scoring machine, won MVP in 2014. Russell Westbrook exploded with triple-doubles like no one before. James Harden became a 30-point scoring threat every night. Kawhi Leonard emerged as a two-way superstar and Finals MVP. The 2000s also saw the rise of player empowerment. Players moving teams in free agency, demanding trades, and controlling their own narratives like never before. Social media exploded, making players celebrities beyond the court. Every shot, every flop, every tweet was dissected by millions. This decade wasn't just about winning. It was about brand, power, and personality. LeBron James became more than a player. He became a voice for social justice, philanthropy, and change. And that, maybe more than his titles, will define his legacy. The 2020s. The modern era. Jokic, Giannis, and the next generation. Welcome to the decade where basketball feels new again. The 2020s aren't just about superstars. They're about changing the way the game is played. At the center of it all, Nikola Jokic, the Serbian center who plays like a point guard. With his incredible passing, basketball IQ, and scoring touch, Jokic won back-to-back MVPs in 2021 and 2022. He's proof that the modern NBA values skill and vision over just athleticism. Then there's Giannis Antetokounmpo, the Greek freak. A 6'11" monster who runs the floor like a guard, dunks like a freight train, and plays defense like a wall. Giannis led the Milwaukee Bucks to an NBA title in 2021, their first in 50 years. His story, from a skinny kid in Greece to an NBA champion, inspired millions worldwide. But it's not just Jokic and Giannis. The 2020s are bringing in a wave of young stars shaping the future. Luka Doncic, the slick Slovenian with a magician's handle, and clutch gene Joel Embiid, a dominant two-way big man who mixes power with skill Ja Morant, a high-flying guard who electrifies fans every night Anthony Edwards. The explosive scorer and highlight reel king analytics and positionless basketball dominate today. Teams focus on versatility, spacing, and three-point shooting more than ever. Centers shoot threes, guards post up, defense switches on every screen. Off the court, players have never been louder about social issues, equality, and activism. The NBA remains a leader in athlete empowerment, and players use their platforms to spark real change. The league also faces new challenges. The global pandemic paused the game, creating the NBA bubble in 2020. A historic experiment in sports safety and mental toughness. New stars are emerging fast, and the championship race feels wide open. One thing is clear, the NBA of the 2020s is faster, smarter, and more global than ever. As the league evolves, one question remains. Who will be the next generation's Michael Jordan? The next king? The next legend? Only time will tell. Which NBA era do you think was the most unforgettable? Drop your pick in the comments, and don't forget to like if you learned something new.